Today I'm going to show you how to make a delicious gravy using vegetables, especially if you don't want to use flour or cornstarch to make your gravy. Now the basis of my gravy today is going to be onions. However, it is very common for people to use other vegetables, especially if you have made a stock. Say you've made a stock with onions and celery and carrots. You could actually just blend those vegetables and use them for a gravy. However, you don't always have a stock made. So I'm going to show you how you can do it just with what you have around your house. Okay, y'all, so I have my enamel cast iron skillet. I'm going to add some olive oil. You guys are so funny. One of my commenters said I should name my yellow cast iron skillet Auntie B. Okay, what y'all think about that? Okay, she is yellow. Y'all know I got Sister Mabel. Maybe this should be Auntie B. Let me know what y'all think. Now I'm going to add in all of my onions. Now y'all, you really need to do this in a heavy bottom pan like a cast iron skillet or even carbon steel. It's going to help the temperature regulate better, and you just want to make sure that you are really attentive. Now you don't have to be stirring it all the time, but especially when you first put in the onions and near the end, you really have to watch it because we're going to be cooking these onions for about 30 minutes or so until they are nice, caramelized, and just shrunk down a lot. To help encourage the onions to just release their moisture and cook down, I'm going to add a pinch of kosher salt. It may be very tempting to want to like crank your heat up really high so this can cook faster. Please do not do it, okay? What's really going to happen is that they're going to just burn, and you do not want that. Your gravy will taste terrible. Since this is a long process, what I encourage you to do is just maybe make more onions at one time so that you don't have to do it quite as often, and then you can always have those caramelized onions on hand so that you can make a little quick gravy. If you are watching this video, it is very likely that you are either gluten-free or just on a lower carb diet. Hopefully you're not on keto, because baby, I can't tell you this recipe is keto. But if you are looking for a lower carb potato mash, I'm going to show you one recipe that I like to use. Now, I am going to be using potatoes in this. I'm using 3 of them. And I'm going to leave on a little bit of the skin because I feel like when you see a little bit of skins in the mash, you're convinced that this is totally all potatoes. And then I'm going to cut them up into about 1-inch cubes and place them in a bowl. Then I'm going to cover them up with water so they don't turn brown while I prep my other vegetables. To lower the carbs, I am going to use 1 whole head of cauliflower. Now, I know what y'all going to say. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Girl, that cauliflower is beat up. Like, why it got all that little black stuff on it? Like, girl, you couldn't get a better cauliflower for the video? Listen, you know I already paid too much for this cauliflower with them prices in the store. And this is the one I had in my fridge. So, baby, this is the one that I'm going to use. Do you hear me? Because it's still good. It's on its last leg, but it's still what? It's still got a leg. I'm going to cut this cauliflower up into medium-sized pieces and then add it into the same bowl with the potatoes. The cauliflower is going to stretch this mash. It's going to add lots of fiber. It's creamy. It's pretty indetectable with the potatoes. Now, I have done it where I have just made cauliflower mash, but I feel as if the starchiness, like that body you get from potatoes, is missing. So at minimum, I would add 1 or 2 potatoes, even if you don't want to do 3. You're going to simmer this in a little chicken bouillon and salt for 20 minutes or until the potatoes are very soft. While those potatoes are cooking, the onions have been continuing to caramelize. It takes them about 30 to 40 minutes to get to this stage. When it gets near the end, turn your heat on low. Don't burn it, baby. Don't burn it. You done worked hard. You don't want to lose it, okay? It needs to get to about this point. Then you can just take them off the stove. I am going to use some beef stock. I like stock over broth because I feel as if the flavor is richer. You are going to want anywhere from 1.5 cups to 2 cups of beef stock.
I think that beef stock works better than chicken stock in this recipe because it's a brown gravy. So it's going to give it a different type of flavor. Because this is no salt, I'm going to put in like a half of a teaspoon of beef bouillon and a little bit of kosher salt.
Now I'm going to remove all of the onions from the skillet. There is a bunch of flavor in this skillet that we do not want to miss out on in our gravy. So I'm going to add that beef stock in here. And I'm just going to allow it to warm up in the pan on like a low temperature. We're not really trying to concentrate the beef stock. We're really trying to get all of these bits, this fond up, so that it can add flavor to the gravy. Make sure you're using your spatula and actively scraping the bottom of your skillet. I love to use a wooden spatula because I don't want to scratch up my cast iron skillet. Now that I've scraped up most of the fond, I'm just going to turn the eye off. And we're ready to use this liquid for our gravy. To make this easy to put into the blender, I'm going to pour my broth back into my mixing bowl. Clearly I spilled a wee bit, so I'll just add a little touch more.
Now the gravy is really going to start to come together. I have measured out 3/4 of a cup of the caramelized onion. I actually had more like extra, so I'm just going to save that for another recipe. Into that, I'm going to add a generous pinch of black pepper as well as some rosemary and some of the beef stock. I'm going to start to blend this on the lowest speed, and I'm going to gently move it up to the highest speed on my Vitamix. When you are blending, you often get to a point where there's really not so much sloshing around the blender and you have a little vortex made. So once I get that steady vortex, I am going to start dropping in cubes of butter and steady streaming in some of the stock. I want to use all of my stock, and I also want to put in about 1 to 2 tablespoons of butter. That butter is going to make it thicker and richer. I mean, y'all, it is a gravy. It's going to have some fat on it. You know what I'm saying? And so at this stage, I realized that the color of my gravy was not where I want it to be. So I'm going to use literally like 2 drops of browning. You could also use kitchen bouquet, or you could just use none at all because this is purely cosmetic. I'm going to adjust the seasoning, and then I'm going to stream in some more butter and the rest of the stock until the gravy can stick to the back of my spoon and it has the flavor that I want. This gravy really is the perfect pair for this potato and cauliflower mash, so I highly suggest that you make this part of the recipe. At this point, my potatoes are tender. They are fork tender. In fact, you can even push them a little further than fork tender just to make sure that they mash properly. And so I am going to drain everything. Do not rinse anything with cool water, okay? Because then you're going to stop the cooking process. And honey, you want everything to be tender and warm. Put a few tablespoons of butter in the same pot that you just drained everything out of. So I'm using about 2 to 3 tablespoons of butter right here. I know some of y'all like, with all this fat. Yes, honey. Yes, honey. Okay, we can't have low carb, no flour, no fat, no seasoning. Like, look, you got to have something to make this taste good. Okay, don't even talk to me about calories. If you want low carb, low fat, low calorie, baby, you just drink water. Okay, if you want water, just drink water. Because right now I'm trying to give you flavor. So once I have mashed everything with my potato masher, I'm going to go in with a generous amount of salt and pepper, a few tablespoons of sour cream, a little bit of Parmigiano Reggiano. This is optional really, but I think it adds a little nuttiness to this mash, and a splash of heavy cream. Don't add milk. Cauliflower already is a tad on the watery side, so you want everything to be rich, creamy that you put in this mash to give it body. Y'all, this very, very good. You don't want to miss out on this recipe or the gravy. Once you pour this on top, you serve this with like maybe my air fried chicken and some green beans. Oh my goodness, this will be a wonderful meal. Goodbye, y'all, and God bless.